right, well, we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday School. It's good to see all of you, and thanks for being here. I hope you found the coffee on your way in. There's some muffins out that way as well, so feel free to help yourself throughout the hour. As we transition from getting here to being here, I'd like to open us with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, whether our mornings have been chaotic or smooth, whether they have been full of conversation or silence, whether they've gone according to plan or completely veered off course, we thank you that we've each landed here in this sacred space among this community of people. We pray for a morning of connection and compassion, and we thank you for those who have offered to share their time and experiences. We pray that each of us would continue along our own lives of discipleship, shaped and changed and encouraged by those we encounter. Through Christ we pray. Amen. Well, this morning we are excited to continue our summer series, Pathways of Discipleship, this week by welcoming a crew of folks who have been deeply involved in Covenant's partnership with Avery County, particularly post-Helene. We have a number of kind of segments to the morning, and we're going to begin by hearing from Mandy Rencher, Covenant's Director of Mission and Outreach, who many of you know quite well, about the history of this partnership. And then we'll turn toward a time of conversation with all of these panelists who will introduce themselves shortly if you don't know them already, so that we can hear about what this partnership has looked like pre and post-Helene, as well as about how it has impacted their own life of faith and their own pathway of discipleship. So our intention at the end of kind of some panel time is to leave a little bit of space for question and response. So as they share, I encourage you to be thinking about what questions or responses you might have to some of what they share. On that note, Mandy, I'd love to have you start us off by sharing a little bit about the partnership with Avery County, the history, and what that looks for us now.
Okay. Wow, that's really loud. Thank you all for coming today. And as I look around, I know that most of you here I've been in Avery County with almost everybody in this room. So we thank you for how much you love this partnership and the people in Avery County as well. And just before I start with a little bit about the history, these guys, in addition to Amanda Abram, have been the task force that we put together after the storm and have just put unbelievably countless hours into this ministry, and I'm so grateful for them and love working with them on this. So Bob Henderson was up in the mountains back in 2012 and went to Crossnor Presbyterian Church on January 1st, 2012. He was up there after the Christmas busy time and snuck in the back of the church, and the minister, knows everybody at that church. It's a little congregation. It's much bigger in the summertime, and she spotted this unfamiliar man in the back and made him introduce himself, and I think he just said, "I'm Bob," and they had, the passing of the peace. And I have an email that he wrote to Kathy the next day, on January 2nd, 2012, that I'm going to read. But just a little part of it to make you understand everything is that, Crossnor Communities for Children is right near there, and they would often have cottages of children come and worship with them. And so that's part of this email and part of this story. So this is January 2nd, 2012 at 7:54 a.m. Kathy, I enjoyed worshiping with you yesterday and am grateful for your leadership. It is a rare privilege simply to attend church. I last attended church nearly 2 years ago, and the warm welcome and meaningful worship I experienced at Crossnor Presbyterian Church was a delight. As you know, when you attend worship, you never know what's going to happen, and I want to share with you a deeply beautiful experience from yesterday's service. After tolerating the introductions, I understand them but don't like them. Y'all can remind him of that if you don't like passing in the peace. And listening to the prayer request, You encouraged us to pass the peace, an awkward moment for any visitor. I slowly turned to my elderly neighbors, and as I did, you came over to the kids sitting in front of me from Crossnor Communities for Children, Crossnor School, hugged each one, lightly kissed them on the cheek, and wished them a Happy New Year. I couldn't help but think of greeting our own kids in the exact same fashion every New Year's morning for the last 20 years. It was a spontaneous act of beauty on your part to offer love, welcome, and an affectionate blessing to those whose lives have been littered with brokenness. It reminded me of what the Church of Jesus Christ is for, to offer a warm welcome to the broken, the unconditional embrace of God, and the power of blessing to the vulnerable. The sermon you preached later in the service was good, but the sermon you lived at the beginning was compelling. It was a beautiful beginning to my year, wonder that I will ponder for quite some time. Blessings, Bob. And Kathy wrote him back and said, and that is how the whole partnership began. And within 2 days, Carla Leaf was copied on all these emails, and they were like, "What can we do to partner with folks in this community, and how can we build on this?" There are lots of covenant families who have homes in the mountains. Through the years, lots of covenant people have retired up there, and so it just was this natural connection. And Carla put together a group that went up there for the first time. The Gilmer Center was already there, which the Gilmer Center is owned by Habitat and is kind of a bunkhouse lodge that we stay in when we go up there. And they had an exploratory team that went up and did some habitat work, went to Crossnor Communities, visited RAM, all the things that we still do, and it just went from there. So from that time on, and y'all do please let me know if I'm wrong, we started having week-long mission trips up there that we would go once a year for a week, and then there was a team that would go up the third Wednesday of every month, kind of an unofficial group from Covenant that would go up and join the team that works with the Habitat builds the third Wednesday of the month. So that's how it all started.
Thank you, Mandy. I know, let me just get a show of hands. Who here has been to Avery County before? Okay, so the majority of you, and we've got a couple folks who haven't. This Sunday school is also being recorded, so folks might be watching later this week. So Mandy, would you just share briefly about Crossnor Communities, RAM, and Habitat, and kind of what the focus is of, and anyone feel free to chime in, but just in case anyone's not familiar with kind of the mission, would you speak to that for each of these different locations?
Yeah, thank you. I know we can often assume with lots of things at church that everybody knows what we're talking about, but RAM stands for Reaching Avery Ministry, and it is an organization up there that is very similar to crisis assistance, kind of a cross between crisis assistance and Second Harvest and kind of a Goodwill. It's kind of like lots of things in the mountains. They wear a lot of hats. So they provide rent and utility service for people. A big thing they do is every winter they help with paying for propane for heating for a lot of the elderly up there. That's very expensive for them, and they most of them might be in a rental or they can't afford to convert to electric, and it is like $700 per tank, and that lasts them about a month and a half. So a lot of folks need assistance with that. They have a food program, they have a store, and anyway, we go and volunteer there. If you've been to the gift market, they are who give us all that amazing pottery. So when people donate pottery to sell in their store, they save it back for us, and we sell it for higher prices here and then send all the money back to them. So that's a great way that we partner with them. Habitat, Avery County is, I think most everybody's familiar with Habitat, and it's a different paced operation than our Habitat here. They typically are working on 2 to 3 homes a year, and it's very heavily volunteer based. It's a small organization. They have about 3 employees, kind of some are part-time. It kind of fluctuates how many there are, but it's a small but mighty team. And then Cross Nor Communities for Children is a children's home up there that was built in the early 1900s, and it started as a school for all children that lived anywhere nearby, and a lot of them were walking or riding horses or horse-drawn wagons. And when the weather is so bad up there, they couldn't come and go every day, and so the family, the Sloop, started housing them there. And then over time, it turned into that a lot of the kids just ended up living there, and eventually it turned into kind of a foster community. So now they do a lot of work with DSS and keep children, hoping to get them reunified with their families. And it's an amazing program. It's grown a ton over the years, and they do all kinds of other interesting things with children. So that's an overview, and I'm going to turn the microphone over now.
Thank you, Mandy. I appreciate that. We're going to shift into a little bit of conversation on what this partnership has looked like pre and post Helene. Before I offer up a few questions, would our other panelists just introduce yourself and maybe share about how long you've been engaged in work with Avery County?
I'll go first. I'm Jane Freeman. If you can't hear me, tap your ear. I have been engaged in the work with Avery County through Covenant. I went on the first mission trip last April, so about a year and a half ago was the first time I went up there.
Thank you.
I'm Phil Kuntz. I've been involved with Avery since before the pandemic. I don't even remember the first time I went up there, but I've been going back regularly ever since.
Hello, I'm Trip Moore, and I've been involved with Avery. I was on the second trip, so probably 2013, 2014. I've been heavily involved since.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Well, Trip and Phil, I'm going to start with you guys. Y'all have been involved. Phil, you're going first, I guess.
Okay.
Y'all have been involved with Avery County for a while now. So you have seen what this partnership and what work looks like pre-Helene and post-Helene. And when we were meeting to plan for this time together, you just spoke a little bit about how, in many ways, Helene was an inflection point for this partnership. So we would love to hear your reflections on that, as well as kind of what this has looked like pre-Helene and post-Helene, given your experiences.
Okay. I have been up there a number of times. They have a very strong Habitat chapter up there. They built, I think, 56 houses or so in total. We have a small group up there that works on Habitat houses every week. It's called the FAB group, I think is what they call themselves, and I can't remember what that acronym is exactly, but they work every single week, and there's a number of members of that group who are former Covenant members. I guess maybe some of them still are. Kim Barnhart, Mike Brown, Diane Jackson, Kay Wheeler. You all may know most of these folks, but at any rate, they're that group, and then there's some local folks who live up there work on Habitat every week. And so I began going up there the third Wednesday of every month just to participate with that group. And so my involvement began, again, but well before COVID. I guess the good thing for Covenant was that we were already involved up there, and knew the folks on the ground and so forth before the storm hit. And then when it did hit, it was a natural thing for us to flip the switch and really go into overdrive to help address the issues up there. So that's what we did. And so we've been, ever since then, we've been going at least twice a month, and sometimes more frequently than that, to help build up there, to rebuild up there. Of the 4,000, 4,500 homes up there, about 10% of them were damaged. 170 or so of those were completely destroyed. Another 230 or so were damaged to the point where they couldn't be occupied. And so there was a lot of need immediately, and so we again, we kind of flipped that switch and went into overdrive.
Yeah, that's great. What Phil said is great. But yeah, I think, pre-Helene, our involvement with Avery County was going up to work on the houses that were maybe 2 houses or 3 houses that were in production during the course of the year. And with that, they would complete maybe 1 house per year. It is a limited staff, and it's very heavily volunteer-based. They relied on college kids to come up on alternative spring breaks and alternative summer breaks to work. And we were lucky enough and fortunate enough at Covenant to be able to work sometimes in the spring and the fall to cover 2 more weeks for them. But if they completed 1 house per year and they were able to move that family in, that was a big deal for Avery County. And so I think having those prior relationships was great with RAM. Ruth Shirley was the principal of Crosnor Elementary School, and she moved into a role called with Volunteer Avery that then was able to address the immediate needs of the people who maybe with and without homes. They were able to get them warmth and clothing and temporary housing and move them into places that would allow work teams like ours and the larger teams of FEMA and Samaritan's Purse and the list goes on to get in there and start the muck and gut and the cleanup. And that's really where it changed for us. Instead of driving nails to finish houses, we were there tearing stuff out and tearing it down before it could be rebuilt.
Yeah. The frequency changed a lot and is ongoing in terms of how much we're going.
No, yeah, and so frequency is a big deal. The third Wednesday group turned into the first Monday and the third Wednesday of every month for the post-Helene work. We had a Friday, Saturday overnight, and we will also have 2 full weeks that we're working. So that's it certainly has increased the frequency of assistance.
Yeah, thank you. Jane, you had been once before Helene, but have been more involved since then. So would you share a little bit about how your love of Avery County and of this partnership has grown over time, and particularly mindful of that of Helene and how that shifted things
Sure.
for you?
So I went once to Avery County with the church before Helene, but I have grown up going there. My 95-year-old grandmother went to Linville in Avery County as a child. So I have been to the county 1,000 times. I have been to the other side of the county from all of these places that we're talking about. And that is where I feel called to this ministry. I have always known that there is a different set of circumstances from the Linville grandfather, Linville Ridge side of the county, and the Cranberry, Minneapolis, Newland side of the county where we are working as a church. And I would say the storm just broke my heart wide open to that. I knew it was there, and you see it. And, Avery always comes up on the list of counties in the state that is in the most need of resources. And I remember we drove up, so the storm was on a Friday, Thursday night, Friday morning, and then nobody heard anything about how bad it was until Monday. And my line of work here in Charlotte's tangentially related to healthcare, so I started hearing from work that the hospitals were going to expect an influx of patients here. And then I had family in Asheville that started calling. So anyway, and then the church did a donation drive, and I think we drove up there on Wednesday or Thursday of that next week. And this is a story. My parents have a house in Linville, and going up there, you had no idea what to expect. If you've driven up 181 since, I mean, it looked apocalyptic. There were tens of thousands of trees down everywhere. Everything was brown. And when I walked up to my parents' house, I thought, what am I going to walk into? And it's a second home. It is a fancy home. And I was like, I think their house might be destroyed. And when I opened the door, I was expecting to see 6 inches of water and down debris like you'd seen on the news. And I opened the door, and everything was perfect. And we live on a creek. And I had this moment of thinking, this is not fair. And my parents are like, well, we're really happy that, and I'm really happy too, but it's not fair that the families that could have afforded a repair, we were not impacted. And I just, like, it's like we've all had those moments in your mission and outreach work where you don't understand and it doesn't make sense, and then what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And so what I try to do, and I am the worst task force member, I do not deserve to be on the stage with these people, because I don't go up as much as they do, and I don't know how to do what they do, and my job on the work site is to pick up the trash. But that's my, yeah, it's essential. I do it, it's what I do at my house too, so I'm really good at it. But like, that's my husband. Um, that's how I was like, this is where I need to be right now, because there, and we all see it, this disparity, but this for me, it was like God was saying, you need to look here a little bit harder.
Thank you. Mandy, from the covenant side of things, Jane already mentioned how there was very quickly a drive done here, but you were obviously a major point person post Helene, and so what did that look like from the covenant side of things in those early weeks in terms of our efforts, maybe compared to what that's looking like now?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it is kind of like Phil said, there were already these really genuine relationships with our partners up there that from years of covenant being connected with people. And so, and probably on Saturday after the storm had been Thursday and Friday, and we were like, it was just so crazy, wasn't it? You're like, gosh, it has been devastating. Like it's just devastating what's happened up there. So I emailed on behalf of Covenant, all our different partners up there, and texted people just like, we're thinking about y'all. We hope you're okay. And it wasn't. It made it so it was just so different than we were like, oh gosh, we're worried about the people in North Carolina. Like, what could we do? It was like, we need to check on our friends that are our church, our Covenant friends. And so we checked in with everybody, and on Sunday or Monday, we'd come up with a plan to do a food drive to start with, and to do a request for hurricane relief funds. And Bob, is so invested in this partnership, and he sent out an email. And from that one email, we had 5 pickup trucks full of the foods that they had requested at RAM, and about over the course of the next few weeks, $318,000 came in from the congregation for the hurricane relief funds. So it was just this very immediate and generous and beautiful outpouring of love from the whole congregation. So we took the food up there that Friday, and then just kept checking in, like, what can we do? What can we do? And different teams went up and did things like repaired small bridges to people's homes. Some friends of ours, Amos and Casey, their culvert had been washed out. We did a variety of small to these guys, but like kind of like Jane said, like I'm like there for emotional support and trash picking up and handing things around to people, and but they did all kinds of little. I mean, I'll say little just because it wasn't like a whole home repair, which we got into more later. But at the beginning, there were lots of like kind of debris removal. And then we had one day a team of us went up and went to RAM, and we got there, and it was on a Monday. And over the weekend, all the folks that work at RAM had been there on Saturday up until like lunchtime. And when they got there Monday morning, I wish I could show you all the picture overhead, but when they got there Monday morning, it had rained on Saturday and Sunday, and the back of the building is like as long as our fellowship hall, and across the whole back of the building there were donations piled up to the top of the breezeway and about 15 feet deep, and it had all gotten rained on, and it turned into that was like all that their volunteers and their staff could do was manage all these donations. So it was so well intentioned. Like people were just, driving up to the mountains wanting to take things that they donated, and then we were realizing like they had nowhere to store the stuff. They were having to dry out hundreds and hundreds of blankets that had gotten poured down rain on, and that is just a great example of like that you always want to really know like what people need versus what you think they need, and to be really in communication with them. So that was when we started just being like, we're not taking anything else up there, and we ended up like helping them with getting stuff into storage trailers and all kinds of different things. It was a gift when we went 2 weeks ago. I guess that's when we were there. They have finally sorted through all that stuff, and they're on the end of like they're in a good place with it now. But it's a great thing to think about when there's a storm other places. Like often I think what people need most is money, and to let folks on the ground help drive like what gets brought in. It was pretty overwhelming, and we spent our whole day hauling off things that were ruined from being in the things. And to tie back into Jane, with her parents' house, we went to the Linville Country Club and used their dumpster, so we were grateful for that. That was a pretty funny experience. And then it evolved from there. We got this team together, and again Amanda is part of this team also, just to not leave her out, and just said, how do we wrangle this? And we came up with this first Monday, third Wednesday, more trips the weekend. We're probably going to add another weekend this fall. And it's just been a beautiful thing. I don't even know how to figure out how many different Covenant members have gone up on all these work days. We have 15 slots every trip, and we have a wait list because it's often like, and you can only use so many people, but it has been it's been a beautiful outpouring of love.
I forgot I'm in charge of this. Thank you, Mandy. Kind of closing this portion of our conversation around Helene, Mandy, I think you have spoken in a way that makes it clear that there's a lot of hope in terms of where things have been and where things are going. And I would just pose to everyone, when you look at Avery County right now, where is it that you are seeing hope?
We have lots of stories to tell, but where do I see hope? When we were there last week, Ruth Shirley came to talk with us. Ruth is, you've heard the name before. She has been on the ground as one of three, I think, folks who've been coordinating the relief effort with individual families and so forth. And so she has been the recipient of a whole lot of requests, and she knows exactly what's going on and who needs help and so forth. And what was interesting to hear from her last week is a couple of things. First of all, she's taken a day off now, and that's a real positive. She's not taking phone calls on the weekends anymore. She feels like the emergencies are all pretty much over. There's still a lot to be done, still a lot of folks that need help and so forth, but the real urgency is kind of over. The second thing I would say about what she presented to us is that she was really positive about how, even as bad as Helene was for the community, many of these people are going to be better off than they were before. The places that they're living are better than they were before. And even if they're in the same place, they've been upgraded. New flooring, new walls, new paint, new roof, etc., whatever. So that's very hopeful. And there is still a lot of effort going on. FEMA is still there. Samaritan's Purse is still there. Appalachian Service Project is still there. And there are these plans to build lots and lots of of housing, modular homes, stick-built homes. So there's just a lot going on, and hopefully the entire, the boats rise with the tide, and so hopefully the tide is rising in Avery County. Sorry.
Don't use the tide reference. Yeah, I 100% agree that, what was the question?
Hope.
Yeah. Hope, my role took on a little bit different project as well, was helping get the tiny houses from Charlotte to the mountains. I worked with Appalachia Service Project, who would bring the flatbed trailers from Georgia to Charlotte, and then folks at Habitat for Humanity of Charlotte would build the tiny houses, and these are on 16-foot long by 8-foot wide trailers. They had a set of bunk beds in it, so you could sleep 4 people in 2 full-size beds, small kitchenette, and a small bathroom at the other end of it. And being part of that project, getting the trailers from point A to point B up to the mountain to point C was really cool. But driving in and helping deliver the trailers to these people who have nothing. One of the gentlemen had been living in a tent for months and months and months. And just seeing his face and knowing that he'd have a dry place to be able to sleep was incredible. So, yeah. The whole story? So this gentleman, long story short, he'd been married 5 times, and he'd been divorced 5 times. 4 of the 5 tried to kill him in some way, shape, or form, and that's why he died, either by rat poisoning or stabbed him or pointed a gun at him and almost shot him. He needs to take a break from marriage, I think.
Oh my goodness.
So he was a great, fun guy to meet. But his 5th wife. So the reason he missed the storm, actually, his 5th wife planted meth in his car and then called the cops and had him arrested with a package of methamphetamines in the back of his vehicle. And so he went to prison, and when he got out of prison, he went home, literally walked from the jail miles to his house, where his house was, and his house had been washed downstream. And so where I was ordered to take the tiny house was to his tent, which is where his house used to be. And so he was released in April of this year, and I delivered the house about a month and a half ago. So he'd been living in a tent for about 4 months or so. And having the conversation with him is that everything that he owned was literally sitting in a space that's the size of this platform. What do you do for food, water? He said, well, the stream's running this way, and he said, I get my drinking water from here, and I wash my dishes here, and shower there, and do everything else down there. So it's just downstream. And so having that conversation with him and being present with him, that's where you see hope. That he just flat out said, I just am happy to have a place to sleep that's dry tonight. So seeing that little bit of hope is pretty incredible as well.
Betsy Ross is,
I know.
not that Betsy. Betsy is going to be soon, very soon, I hope, a recipient of one of the Habitat houses. She has had a really difficult recent time of it. She has, I think, 3 or maybe 4 kids. Is it 4 kids? She lost her husband 3 or 4 months ago, I want to say, recently. She was unemployed. She doesn't drive, and so she's, basically got nothing, no support, and she's got 4 children to raise. And so, again, we are nearly finished with her house, so she will be able to move in. She has been, I think they've worked with her to try to get her some employment at a daycare center where she can actually take her kids. And so she's gotten employment, and she's got also a place for her kids during the day. And so that's a real story of hope, I think. Yeah, yeah. So she's learning how to drive, and so yeah. Again, it's just one of those situations where maybe will end up better off than she started when the storm hit. So.
Thank you. Well, y'all have already kind of beautifully shifted into a section of this morning that I want to encourage us to have a little bit more personal reflection on how the impact of this work, what the impact of this work is on your life of faith. I know that you have so many stories, as do the folks gathered here that have also spent some time in Avery County. So is there, beyond the stories that you've shared, is there a particular day or trip that you found, exceptionally meaningful for you when you reflect on your time in Avery County, either pre or post Helene?
Um, Many of you may have heard Amanda talk about Bud Smith. He was one of the first folks that we went to help. His house is right on the Linville River. It was flooded up to, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet in the house. Anyway, I wouldn't say this is a single moment, but I think to see over time, as we worked with Bud over probably 2 months or so, the change in him was really meaningful. When we first got there, he sat on this old exercise bicycle, kind of staring out the window, forlorn and just really down. And as we worked with him, his whole demeanor changed over time. And as we were wrapping up the work, I mean, he was joking with us and telling stories about bear hunting and dogs and who knows what. And in the circus, yeah. And so just to see this change from despondency on the one end of the spectrum to this guy who's joking and having a good time, and his spirits are so much better, that has helped me. That has been a gift to me to be able to one, to be a part of it, and two, to witness that change that has come over him. So.
Thanks, Bill.
I spoke with somebody through work who told me this spring when the green started coming back out, she was like, this is the first time we've seen green since September. Just everything was mud washed up there for so long. And so I think about like God's role in rebirth and bringing the green back and what that means to people. And she kind of framed it. She got really weepy when she was saying that. And I was like, does that make you sad when you think about the green? She goes, I don't want anybody to ever forget the brown. Like, I don't want people to come up here in May and June and to see how beautiful it is and to forget what we went through, like what they literally trudged through mud for 9 months to get back to the green. And so that sticks with me, that there is this new cycle and it's good and we need to get better, but we can't forget what they all went through and how, like, the traumatic response to this. She shared that she has families that still drive to a flat parking lot every time it rains because they're so scared of how big of a rain it's going to be, and they don't trust the forecast, because they didn't know what was coming the last time either. And then it's hard for me not to mix all my worlds up here, but I work with pregnant women, and so it's been now 10 months since the storm. But women who were pregnant, we started seeing like anecdotal evidence of a toxic or a traumatic response to pregnancy. So like they're seeing lower birth weights and preterm deliveries up there in that region, and some of that is due, I believe, to women who were under constant stress for 3 or 4 months, and if you didn't have water and what that meant, and then young children also, like 2 and 3 year olds who were potty trained, they've seen these huge regressions of potty training, so like needing size 6, 7, 8 diapers and pull-ups, which are large diapers, because kids didn't have water for 3 or 4 months and couldn't go to the bathroom. So I think it's kind of this like lingering, we can't forget what happened, and we're not going to be able to if we keep looking for and listening to it. This is not hopeful. I should not have been the one to end this. Sorry.
Still impactful. Yeah. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you see hope when you're up there, and I think to me one of the biggest is all the volunteers, and y'all were listing all the different agencies that are up there, but Tripp and I went up to this big meeting was that in January? And it was the intention was to get everybody together, all these big, I'm not quite sure why we were invited, but it was like Red Cross and FEMA and, all the biggest Chief Cares, which had, had that concert in Charlotte and raised like $16 million was going to go to Avery County, just some extraordinary amount. And just, all those people people show up when there is tragedy, like just the good and how people love each other and care for each other. So on the bigger level, all of that. And then, on our experience level, just how the whole congregation has showed up, how, people who take a day to go up there and meet at 6:45 or 7 in the parking lot. 6:45 if you ride with Phil, 7 for everybody else. And and then, the folks up there that we've been mentioning, but, Kim Barnhart, who is going to be here in a couple Sundays when we celebrate the 1-year anniversary, who, most of you probably know. I think she was the clerk of session here before she moved to the mountain. She's just her heart for this work and her connection and her positivity, her relationships. It's just beautiful, like how she is using her life to connect with this church that she cares about so much, and then her new community up there that she loves, those people, and just the work that she puts into it and her heart, and that just think she's so inspiring to so many of us. It's really amazing, and so many people are. It's really beautiful how generous people are with their time, and people who have talent, they're very generous with their talents.
Thanks, Mandy. Roger that. Mandy, I appreciate you bringing in Kim, and you all have met countless people. And one of the things I wanted to have you reflect on is how your time in Avery County has impacted your own understanding of discipleship and what that looks like in your own life. So that's kind of one part of this question. And then a second part would be, are there folks who you've met who you think, gosh, there is a disciple? So you can answer that, either part of that question.
Countless people. I mean, Kim Barnhart, I'm never not around her and think that Christ just flows through her, like in the way she interacts with people. I noticed the executive director of RAM Ministries, and you alluded to this with Ruth Shirley, they were working all the time. And then, and for not much, like anyway, none of them were taking breaks. There was no distinction between their personal, professional boundaries. They were coming into work and then they were going back to their neighbors, and, it was this huge effort. So, I think I saw it in the people that we worked with who were running the nonprofits the most.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think what the definition of discipleship is to follow and walk as Christ as closely as we can. And I think every hand that we've had the opportunity to lend up there has gotten this church closer to walking with Christ. And I think it's just so impactful. The list goes on and on and on and on of the people who we've seen it in. One of my favorite people up there is Ruth Shirley, outside of our church family, of course, but Ruth, she's just relentless about helping. I don't know a better word. She is just relentless, and she smiles through it. She showed up one day in muck boots, getting ready to clean out a creek that was just littered with tires and debris and everything else, and she's just smiling away. Take these here, take them all away, and just happy as could be to be there to help, knowing the task that was in front of her. So I think there's just, but everyone here who has an opportunity to either give here, either financially or in gifts, or to be able to go up with their talents and be able to lend a hand to help either tear out or build up is just that's just incredible. I see it in everybody there.
Thanks, Trip.
I guess to be the hands and feet of Christ in this world is both an obligation and a privilege. And so I think that it has meant so much to me. I have the time to do it. I'm retired, and I enjoy doing it. But I get so much more out of it than I put into it, I think. So.
Thank you. In a few minutes, we'll shift to collecting a few questions from you all. So if you have one, now would be a great time to go ahead and jot that down. But before we collect those, I'd love to spend just a few minutes hearing about your most recent time in Avery County. So I know Trip, Phil, and Mandy, you all were there. So tell us a little bit about how this past week was spent.
Well, we had a great team of about, the number changed because we had some folks that joined us for days. We had about 14 people up there for the week, and we worked on 2 habitat houses that are both getting very close to completion. One is Betsy Ross's house, and Phil was telling you about Betsy, and that house I think it's very close to being finished. It has been a real challenge. When the storm came, you can imagine getting building inspectors to work that was already going on. It's just that it just has slowed all that down. It just slowed down some of the work that they needed to get done, like getting these pilings driven, like 20 feet into the ground because of the way this Betsy Ross's house is, particularly on the side of the mountain. To put her decking in the back was a big impediment, but she's got a great view now. And then we worked on a house that is right by the Gilmer Center, and it is the family that's going to move into that house, the Wilsons, are living in a camper right beside the Gilmer Center, right across from where their new home is, watching their home be built. Their rental that they were in was destroyed in the flooding, and so with the help of Habitat and who knows what all organizations, it's interesting, they really, all these different organizations partner together, so many things are done with several organizations, combining their resources to support folks. So it is just, I took a picture just with their camper and their house, and you just think about this family of 3 watching their home be built. And we were Phil was working on putting their kitchen cabinets in, and some of us were putting the closets in, and the mom and one of the daughters and son came up to the house, and so it was so fun to get to talk to them about, how do you want your closet system? And we were thinking, oh, this is a little room for these 2 sisters to share. And then you look across the way, and they're all living in a camper that is about the size of the bedroom that we think is small for the sisters to share. So we worked on those 2 houses predominantly. We went to everybody that was a newbie on the trip, which we were excited. We had 3 people that had never been up to Avery County there for the week. They went to Crossnor Communities to have a tour and learn about that special, beautiful place. We got, this kind of sounds crazy, but they donated old uniforms from Crossnor that we will take to Kenya when we go in the fall, things that they would have just taken to a Goodwill. So we'll deliver those when we fly over in September. And then we also did a little bit of work at RAM, like some small groups of people went there. So we were, I think that's every. Oh, and then I would love you to tell about Jamie.
Okay. So I think the unfortunately the death toll in Avery County was 6, and I think there's still one person unaccounted for. One of those people was the wife of Jamie. I don't remember his last name, but he and his son and his wife were getting out of the house, as I understand it, and she went back in for something, and when she went back in, then the house was washed down, and she was lost. And so Jamie has moved. He hadn't moved yet, but I guess FEMA has put a modular home on his father's property. So that's where Jamie will live going forward. He and his son, River, interestingly. Both of them fortunately survived. Jamie was injured a little bit. I think his back was hurt, but the son had a scratch on his arm, and that was it. So I think it was really fortunate for the two of them. But part of the certificate of occupancy requires that this modular home have steps and deck and something. Anyway, so we Covenant have been asked specifically to go work on that project and install the deck for Jamie's new house. And so I haven't personally, but our group has gotten to know Jamie. Kim knows him pretty well now, and so it's that's Jamie's story.
So Kim had been talking with Ruth Shirley about Jamie, but before she met him, she had gone with a friend to put her friend's boat into some lake up there, and it was her friend's first day trying to back the trailer in and get the boat out, and they were struggling with it, and this 30-ish, 40-year-old man came over and was like, "Looks like y'all need some help them with it." And then when they were introducing themselves afterwards, it was Jamie. And Kim was like, "Jamie, like we are gonna come help with your decking." And isn't that just like, she wrote us all this long email. She was just blown away by that story. And she asked him, "How is your son doing?" And his response was, "He's doing better than I am." But then last week when everybody was with him, people were just amazed. He was just working right along with everybody and positive and hopeful. And his home is going to have just this gorgeous view, and he'll live right next to his dad. So that was really special.
Thank you. All right, my last question is just what are the next steps with Avery County and Covenant, and what is upcoming? So whether you are going to be someone who can join in on a trip and go and build a bridge, literally, or you're going to pick up trash and have a conversation with someone. What do those next steps look like for anyone here or watching this later who might like to get involved?
All right. Well, we are going to continue going. When you say we always go the first Monday and third Wednesday, except when we don't. But we we almost always go the first Monday and the third Wednesday. And so please, on the web page, there's a tab for hurricane relief in Avery County. So please go there and look at the Sign Up Genius, and we'd love you to come. And if you want to ask, like, what would it be like up there for a day, you can talk to any of us. I'm happy to get coffee with anybody. I would love to tell you about it. And very, very genuinely, all skill levels are welcome. So there are folks that really can build a house. They could do anything. And then there's people who, that you learn how to put flooring in, or you fill nail holes with caulk, or you pick up trash, or you might be there for fellowship. And all the things are important. Maybe I was going to say all the things are equally important, but you can decide if I should include that word or not. But it really is. It's a great experience for everybody. Even in our week-long trip, we had folks that that, you know, they were not, I mean, I'm not as skilled, but anybody can come and find ways to pitch in and be helpful. So we will continue with those trips. This team will get together and figure out our plans for next year, like when our week-long trips will be. I would imagine that we will have 2 trips again next year, and the weekend trips were really, people really love the weekend option for folks that work, that you could go up there for Friday and Saturday or one or the other. And so I think we'll add another weekend or 2. And then also with the funds that we have, the last fall between when the storm happened and the end of the year, we sent about $30,000 up to Avery County. This year we have $145,000 of the gifts in our budget, and we work with Crossnar Presbyterian really closely to identify how we spend those funds, and a lot of times, you know, they just are in touch with everybody closely, and they'll reach out like, this is a need, we're going to pay half, will you guys pay half? And then this team just, you know, kind of reviews it to be good stewards of the funds that the church collected. We also, with Crossnar Presbyterian, they were very overwhelmed with the amount of requests they were getting, and so there is a lady named Bobby, and I cannot think of her last name right now, Bobby, who worked part-time for Habitat, who started working 10 hours a week for Crossnar Presbyterian, and Covenant has paid her salary, and so she's done a ton of the coordinating in the community. She works really closely with Ruth Shirley, who we keep mentioning, and helping us be connected with folks that need either like part of the money for a roof or for an HVAC system, or, you know, furnace, heat and oil, just any kind of need you could imagine. We have probably helped with that. Even like people whose cars were destroyed, like helping a family get a used car so they can get back to work. So, I mean, the list is very, very long of how these funds have been multiplied with what they've done. So we're continuing to, that's part of our ongoing process too, is continuing to disperse the funds.
Thank you. Well, would you all please join me in thanking our panelists today?